Today, we will explore the real Cleopatra, politics, power, and propaganda. Make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. Let's start with a brief overview before diving into the details. For centuries, Cleopatra has been immortalized as a seductress, a femme fatale whose beauty entranced the greatest men of Rome. But what if everything we've been told is a carefully crafted illusion? Behind the allure, behind the stories of passionate love affairs with Julius Caesar and Marc Antony, lies a woman who was far more than a lover. She was a master of political strategy and the art of propaganda. As the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra's true story is a tale of survival, cunning, and ruthless ambition. Her reign was not just about power, it was about keeping Egypt independent in a world where even the might of Rome couldn't guarantee safety. But to do so, she needed more than just alliances with powerful men. She needed to control the narrative, and she did so by weaving an intricate web of propaganda that shaped not only her image but also her legacy. Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar was not just one of love, it was a calculated political move. With Caesar's death, she was forced to forge another alliance with Marc Antony, but this one came with even greater risks. Their alliance wasn't just a personal bond, it was a statement of defiance against Rome's dominance. But what if it wasn't just their romance that made Cleopatra dangerous to the Romans? What if the real threat was her ability to manipulate both the Egyptian and Roman people through the stories she allowed to be told about her? In the aftermath of Antony and Cleopatra's defeat at the Battle of Actium, history painted Cleopatra as a tragic queen undone by her own desires. But in truth, she had played a far deeper game, one where victory and defeat were just pieces on a larger chessboard. What if Cleopatra's image as a tragic lover was a carefully constructed narrative meant to erase her true power from history? What if the stories we tell about her are part of a much larger propaganda war that continues to this day? As we peel back the layers of myth and examine Cleopatra's actual political prowess, we uncover a queen who was not only the ruler of Egypt but also the master of her own destiny. An enigmatic figure whose legacy was shaped by those who feared her power and sought to control the truth. Was Cleopatra truly the seductress history has made her out to be, or was she a queen who fought to control her kingdom, her image, and the very narrative of history itself? Let's discuss in detail. Topic 1: The Illusion of Beauty. For centuries, Cleopatra has been immortalized in history as the ultimate femme fatale, her beauty and charm seducing the most powerful men of Rome, Julius Caesar and Marc Antony. The world has always viewed her as a captivating siren, whose mere presence could topple empires. Artists, poets, and historians alike have painted her as a symbol of desire, casting her as little more than a woman who used her allure to manipulate and control the fate of mighty men. But what if this portrayal is nothing more than a well-crafted illusion? Cleopatra, the last ruler of Egypt, was far more than the sum of her physical appearance. The seductive image we know today wasn't merely a consequence of her beauty. It was a carefully orchestrated narrative, one that she controlled from the very beginning. Every smile, every gesture, every moment captured in Rome's political spotlight was strategically calculated to serve a greater purpose. Behind the mesmerizing eyes and intoxicating allure, Cleopatra was a woman of great intellect, a master of political maneuvering and propaganda. What if her charm wasn't simply her weapon of seduction, but a tool she wielded to bend the powerful forces of Rome to her will? The image of the sultry queen was not just an accident, it was a creation, shaped by a mind that understood the art of survival, of control, and of making her enemies see only what she wanted them to see. Her beauty may have caught the attention of men like Caesar and Antony, but it was her ability to manipulate power through image and perception that ensured her place in history. Behind the veil of passion and desire, Cleopatra's true genius lay in her ability to turn the world's gaze exactly where she wanted it. Topic 2: A Queen's True Power. Within the lavish walls of Alexandria's palace, Cleopatra's ambition simmers beneath the surface. The weight of the Ptolemaic dynasty presses heavily on her shoulders as the last heir to a once great empire. With Egypt facing growing threats from both within and beyond its borders, Cleopatra is acutely aware that the very survival of her kingdom is at risk. The threats are not just from the emerging power of Rome, but from her own court, where rivals circle like vultures, waiting for any sign of weakness. Her throne, though adorned with jewels, is precariously balanced on the edge of ruin. In such a fragile position, Cleopatra realizes that the survival of Egypt depends not on inherited wealth or bloodline, but on a keen understanding of the political landscape. She quickly sheds any illusions of romantic idealism and instead focuses on what truly matters, securing her rule, and by extension, Egypt's future. Her first calculated move is not a marriage of love, but one of political necessity. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, is her key to survival. But Cleopatra doesn't seek his affection to bask in luxury, she seeks it to solidify Egypt's position in a world teetering on the brink of imperial dominance. She knows the power of Rome is growing stronger by the day, and if Egypt is to remain independent, she must align herself with the Roman leader, not as a lover, but as a political ally. Cleopatra's true weapon isn't her beauty, but her sharp intellect and strategic mind. While Caesar sees a queen with charm and allure, Cleopatra sees the opportunity to secure her throne, and her kingdom's future. She isn't just playing the game of love, she's playing the game of power. Every move, every glance, is calculated to secure not just her position but the survival of Egypt itself. In a world where only the ruthless thrive, Cleopatra knows that her beauty might captivate, but it is her mind that will ensure her legacy. Topic 3. A treacherous alliance. Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar, though draped in the trappings of romance, was never truly about love, it was a meticulously crafted political maneuver. In the tense, power-hungry world of Rome, Cleopatra understood that her survival depended on aligning with the most powerful figure in the world, Caesar. Their union was designed to unite the might of Egypt with Rome's growing empire, ensuring Egypt's place on the political stage. But behind the glances and whispered promises, Cleopatra was playing a far deeper game, one where emotion was a tool, not the end goal. As their alliance deepens, so too does the tension among Rome's elite. Caesar's supporters see Cleopatra's growing influence as a threat, while his enemies plot in the shadows, fanning the flames of distrust. The very foundation of the relationship between Caesar and Cleopatra begins to shake as Rome's internal power struggles intensify. As their political marriage strengthens, Cleopatra begins to weave a web of connections and influence, ensuring that she isn't just a queen in Egypt, but a force to be reckoned with across the Mediterranean. But just as Cleopatra begins to cement her power, tragedy strikes. The brutal assassination of Julius Caesar plunges Cleopatra into uncertainty, and her world starts to crumble. She is no longer the queen with Rome's might behind her, but a lone ruler vulnerable to the shifting tides of Roman politics. The loss of Caesar isn't just the end of a partnership, it's the end of a crucial lifeline. Cleopatra now faces a new reality. Without Caesar's protection, her throne and Egypt's independence are at risk. In the wake of Caesar's death, Cleopatra must act quickly. Her next move is even more treacherous. She turns to Marc Antony, Caesar's ally and one of Rome's most powerful generals. The alliance she forges with Antony is fraught with danger. One false step and the wrath of Rome's Senate could destroy her. Yet, Cleopatra sees the opportunity for a new partnership, one that will not only secure her throne but also challenge Rome's imperial dominance. The stakes are higher than ever. What's at risk now isn't just her love life. It's the future of an empire, and Cleopatra knows that her next move could either seal her legacy or bring everything crashing down. Topic 4. The Battle of Images. As Cleopatra and Marc Antony's relationship deepens, so too does the growing opposition from Rome's political elite. The image of Cleopatra as a seductive queen, once used to her advantage, begins to shift in the eyes of her enemies. The whispers of her influence over Antony start to grow louder, and the once dominant narrative of a woman driven by passion now becomes a weapon to strip her of her power. Her enemies in Rome, seeing her as a threat to their own ambitions, seize the opportunity to brand her as nothing more than a puppet of powerful men, controlled by Caesar, then Antony, with no political will of her own. The narrative takes root quickly. Cleopatra is portrayed as a mere seductress, her political achievements reduced to the whims of the men she seduces. The image of a woman ruling a mighty kingdom is replaced with one of a woman ruled by desire. The consequences are immediate. Her influence in Rome wanes, her agency undermined, and her enemies now have a weapon to weaken her position both in Egypt and on the world stage. But Cleopatra is not one to be so easily defeated. With a determination forged in the fires of survival, she knows she cannot afford to be painted as a mere lover. To secure her legacy, she must reclaim her image, and she does so with breathtaking cunning. She begins to weave a new narrative, one where she is not just a queen, but a divine ruler. A living goddess in the eyes of her people. By embracing the image of Isis, the powerful goddess of Egypt, Cleopatra elevates herself above mere politics. She uses her beauty and intelligence not as tools of seduction, but as instruments of divine authority. She orders the creation of statues, coins, and public symbols, each one depicting her as a powerful deity, ruling with divine right and unmatched wisdom. This is no longer the Cleopatra of seduction, this is the Cleopatra of power. She crafts her own image with precision, reshaping the perception of herself not just in Egypt, but throughout the Mediterranean world. But in doing so, Cleopatra unknowingly ignites a dangerous game of propaganda, one that threatens to engulf her entire reign. Her efforts to reshape history with her image create enemies at every turn. For every piece of propaganda she plants, another is thrown back at her from Rome, accusations of tyranny, manipulation, and dangerous ambition. Now, Cleopatra's battle isn't just for survival, it's a battle for control of the narrative itself. She risks everything on this deadly game of perception. With every image she crafts, Cleopatra stakes her future. Either she will secure her place as the ruler of Egypt, revered as a goddess, or she will lose everything and become a mere footnote in history, reduced to the very stereotype she fought so hard to escape. Tropic 5, the turning point. As the winds of war blow ever fiercer, Cleopatra and Marc Antony's once solid alliance begins to falter. With Rome divided into factions, their enemies grow bolder, using every opportunity to paint them as traitors to the Roman state. The propaganda war intensifies, and Cleopatra's image as a seductress is no longer her greatest threat, it is the label of treachery. The Senate and its allies, furious at Antony's defiance and Cleopatra's influence, begin to rally public opinion against them. The echoes of betrayal reverberate through Rome, shaking the foundations of their power. In Alexandria, Cleopatra's strength as a ruler is tested like never before. The political situation grows precarious as her enemies inside Egypt start to stir, questioning her leadership and allegiance. The Queen of Egypt is no longer seen simply as a political partner to Antony, but as a rival to Rome itself. Every move Cleopatra makes is now scrutinized, every decision weighed not just in the balance of Egypt's survival, but in the shifting tides of international power. As Antony's forces battle the Roman legions in the east, Cleopatra finds herself at the heart of a dangerous political landscape. Her kingdom is surrounded by those who would see it fall. Both external foes and internal conspirators. Yet Cleopatra is no mere figurehead queen. She is a woman who knows how to play the game of survival. Every day, she maneuvers with a sharpness that belies the image of a mere lover. She meets with her most trusted advisors, makes calculated alliances, and even begins to court factions within Rome who might secretly support her cause. But despite her cunning, the danger looms ever closer. Antony's military campaign is faltering. The Roman legions are overwhelming, and the specter of defeat is a constant threat. Cleopatra realizes that the battle for Egypt's future may soon reach her doorstep, and this moment of crisis could be her last. Every choice she makes could either cement her legacy as a powerful ruler or seal her downfall. If she makes the wrong move, her reign could crumble, and with it, Egypt's independence. But if she succeeds, she could rewrite the rules of power in the Mediterranean and secure her throne for generations. As Antony faces an increasingly difficult battle, Cleopatra knows that the next decision she makes will be one of life or death, not just for her, but for her entire kingdom. Her strength, intelligence, and political acumen have brought her this far, but this next move could be her defining moment. And it will determine whether Cleopatra is remembered as a tragic queen or as the ultimate survivor in the ruthless Game of Thrones. Tropic 6, the Battle of Actium. A stage is set for one of the most memorable battles in Middle Eastern history, the naval clash of Actium. This war between Octavian's fleet and the joint forces of Marc Antony and Cleopatra is not merely a military conflict, it is the ultimate culmination of years of political strategy, betrayal, and ambition. Cleopatra, Antony, and the fate of Egypt all hang in the balance of this war. The world watches. Not just to see who will win, but to witness the power shift that will define the future of Rome and Egypt. As preparations for battle progress, Cleopatra's propaganda campaign reaches its peak. Over the years, she has crafted an image of divine authority, a queen not only commanding armies but wielding the power of the gods. Her success as a goddess-like figure becomes unmistakably clear, her royal fleet adorned with the symbol of Isis, her praises sung as acts of divine intervention. Cleopatra is no longer just a queen, she has become the living embodiment of Egyptian resistance against Roman domination. In the eyes of her followers, this war is not just a struggle for political dominance, it is a battle for the soul of Egypt. But behind this epic scene, winds of betrayal begin to stir. Though Cleopatra and Antony's forces are united, cracks start to appear. Some of Antony's generals, still loyal to Rome, begin to question their leader's relationship with the Egyptian queen. Internal divisions grow, as Antony's Roman soldiers, who once revered him as their commander, now find themselves torn between loyalty to Rome and their commander's diminishing strength. Even Cleopatra's own advisors grow wary of Antony's increasing influence, some whispering that the queen's ambition might not be for Egypt's future, but for her own survival. During the battle, Cleopatra and Antony find themselves not only fighting Octavian's powerful forces, but also struggling against the currents of betrayal within their own camp. The roar of naval warfare fills the air, and as their fleet advances, tensions among allies become more and more evident. Despite Cleopatra's meticulous planning and her becoming the face of resistance, the forces around her begin to crumble. One by one, those she had allied with abandon her. Cleopatra and Antony are left helpless. What was meant to reinforce Cleopatra's power may become the end of her reign. The future of Egypt and the legacy of Antony and Cleopatra now hang by a razor's edge. What was once a united front against Octavian's expanding empire now rushes toward ruin, as betrayal prowls every corner. The world watches, uncertain of the outcome, but certain that the Battle of Actium will change history forever, either securing Cleopatra's legacy or erasing her from its pages. Tropic 7, The Fall of the Queen. The Battle of Actium has ended in disaster. The naval forces of Antony and Cleopatra, once a formidable challenge to Octavian's might, have crumbled under the weight of betrayal, disarray, and miscalculation. The queen, who had once held the fate of nations in her hands, now finds herself on the precipice of ruin. Her dreams of a united empire, an Egypt strong enough to defy the Roman juggernaut, shatter as quickly as the waves crash against her broken fleet. In Alexandria, the once grand palace now seems like a prison, the walls closing in as Cleopatra watches her kingdom falter. Her allies, who once swore loyalty, have scattered, leaving her isolated in a city that may soon fall into the hands of Octavian's forces. Her army is in disarray, her resources dwindling, and her subjects begin to lose faith in her leadership. Cleopatra, once the embodiment of power and divine rule, is now reduced to a figure of tragedy. A queen undone not by war, but by her desires and the rebellion she staked her life on. The world watches as Cleopatra's fate seems sealed. She is no longer the revered queen of Egypt, but a tragic lover, a woman who lost everything to a failed romance and a futile battle against Rome. Historians will write of her not as a political strategist, but as a woman driven by love and ambition, undone by her pursuit of power. She becomes a symbol of romantic tragedy, her name forever linked with Antony's as the fallen lovers who challenged Rome and paid the ultimate price. But beneath the weight of her fall, Cleopatra is not idle. While the world believes her to be broken, she silently begins to craft her final move. She knows that her legacy is at risk, not just her reign, but the very narrative of her life. Cleopatra, ever the master of propaganda, begins to shift the story. She realizes that her greatest weapon is not her survival, but the myth she will leave behind. The true endgame is not one of military victory, but of rewriting history itself. Behind the palace doors, Cleopatra makes quiet plans to ensure her image is forever enshrined. She understands that Rome may take her kingdom, but they cannot erase the story she will leave in the hearts of her people. She begins laying the foundation for a posthumous victory, a victory in the court of history. Cleopatra knows that if she cannot reclaim her kingdom, she will reclaim her place in the world's memory. The battle may be lost, but the war for her legacy has just begun. Tropic 8, The Propaganda War. As Cleopatra's downfall looms, her image, carefully crafted over years of political maneuvering and divine symbolism, begins to unravel. Her enemies in Rome, now fully in control of the narrative, work tirelessly to dismantle her legacy. She is portrayed not as the powerful queen she once was, but as a tragic lover, consumed by ambition and desire. The world, it seems, has already rewritten her story. But Cleopatra, ever the strategist, is far from defeated. In the silence of her crumbling court, Cleopatra realizes the only true way to control her future is not through military victories, but through the stories that will be told about her. The world may see her as a failed queen, but she knows that history is often shaped by those who control the narrative. With the remnants of her power, she begins a covert war, a propaganda war, aimed at manipulating the very history that is being written about her. She reaches out to trusted allies in Egypt, across the Mediterranean, and even in the shadows of Rome, forging secret alliances to ensure that her story will be told on her terms. But as Cleopatra begins her final campaign, a darker realization dawns. What if her tragic end was never meant to be the end at all? What if the queen's death, which seems imminent, is simply a carefully constructed illusion, a final stroke of propaganda in a larger, more brilliant plan? Cleopatra begins to sow the seeds of a new myth, one that will survive the centuries. She knows that the ultimate victory may not be in her reign, but in the way the world remembers her. In her final days, Cleopatra orchestrates her death with a chilling precision. It is a calculated act designed not just to end her life, but to ensure that her death will be shrouded in mystery, fueling the myths that will protect her legacy long after she's gone. By presenting herself as a tragic queen, undone by love and fate, she ensures that her story will resonate for millennia. But is her death truly the end, or the beginning of her ultimate triumph? Cleopatra's final act may be her most brilliant. In death, she rewrites history itself, turning her tragic demise into a weapon that will destroy her enemies from within and secure her place in the annals of history as a queen who could never be truly defeated. Topic 9. The truth behind the lies. As time goes by, Cleopatra's name becomes a symbol of tragedy. The world does not remember her as an extraordinary ruler, but rather as a woman who was destroyed by love and loss, her tragic relationship with Julius Caesar, her unfulfilled alliance with Marc Antony, and her ultimate defeat at the hands of Rome. History has depicted her as a lover, a queen whose lust for power led to her downfall. But what if this story, beloved by historians and storytellers, is merely a mask? What if Cleopatra's true story was hidden, even distorted, to protect the interests of those in control of history? Year after year, Cleopatra's true genius, her political intelligence, strategic skill, and propaganda tactics, has remained in the shadows. What if her downfall was not the failure of ambition, but rather the final step in a plan of control? What if the tale of her tragic love affair was carefully crafted to erase the truth of her power? As we peel back the layers of lies and see her legacy with new eyes, a stunning revelation emerges. Cleopatra was working to destroy her enemies from within, ensuring they would never control her story. Once seen as merely a victim of fate, she now rises as a mastermind who understood the power of narrative. Every defeat, every betrayal, every loss was part of a larger plan. Cleopatra's public fall was not just the end of her reign, it was the beginning of her greatest victory. Through her death, she immortalized herself, securing her place in history as a powerful symbol. Her tragic downfall was not a sign of weakness, but a clever strategy that helped change the story and protect Egypt from Roman domination. Her enemies believed they had defeated her, but they had only been played into her hands. The story that painted her as a failed seductress was written by those who sought to conceal her genius. But in the shadow of history, Cleopatra had already rewritten her legacy. Her myth, carefully constructed, was not merely a tragic love story, it was a weapon she used to make her story immortal in the minds of people, ensuring it could never be erased. In the end, Cleopatra's greatest victory was not in her lifetime, but in how she controlled her narrative, ensuring that even in her fall, she would remain the most powerful figure of her age. Topic 10. The shocking finale. The final twist in Cleopatra's story is a revelation that shatters everything we thought we knew about her. For centuries, the world believed that her death marked the end of her reign and her legacy, a tragic conclusion to the life of a queen undone by her love affairs and ambition. But in a shocking turn of events, we learn that Cleopatra's death was not the end of her story, it was the beginning of her true legacy. Her enemies, believing they had finally defeated her, failed to see the depth of her genius. They thought they had wiped away her power by erasing her from the political stage, by turning her into a symbol of failed love. But Cleopatra had already planted the seeds of her return, setting in motion a plan that would ensure her name lived on long after her physical death. The world that thought they had conquered her was merely playing into her hands. For centuries, the stories we've been told about Cleopatra, of her tragic romance, her failed rebellion, and her fall from power, have been carefully crafted to obscure the brilliance that lay beneath the surface. What if her downfall was never truly a defeat? What if it was a deliberate act, a calculated move to manipulate the narrative of her life and secure her place in history as a symbol of resilience, not tragedy? The true power of Cleopatra was never in her love affairs or her political alliances. Her real genius lay in her ability to control the narrative, to shape the story of her life and death in such a way that her legacy would never be forgotten. She didn't just rule Egypt, she ruled history itself, crafting a myth so powerful that it would outlast the empires she once sought to challenge. Cleopatra was not the tragic lover history painted her to be. She was a master of history, a woman who understood that the only way to truly conquer time was to control the stories told about her. In her death, she secured her immortality, not by dying as a defeated queen, but by creating a myth that would endure. The world has only just begun to understand her, not as a victim, but as the architect of her own legacy. Cleopatra's story, crafted with brilliance and foresight, is far from over. It is only just beginning.